And here we are, the end of a day, end of a week, end of a month, and above all, the end of a year. It's been quite a year for me. I've done quite a lot of stuff in my personal life this year, but however, in terms of YouTube and games, it's been a big one for me. I've made countless video essays and reviews over these past 12 months, and I would like to think that I've gotten better with each new video, and because of this drive to create content that I enjoy making, it has led me to try and play many new games, both new 2022 releases and older titles from previous years, and it should be no surprise either that 2022 was the year where I beat the most games in a calendar year. So that's what I wanted to highlight in today's video, ranking the best games that I've played this year, both old and new. So without further ado, let's dive right into it and rank the 15 best games I played in 2022. But first, we gotta go over some honorable mentions. These were games that I enjoyed, but ultimately not enough to make the list. When I beat some of these games earlier this year, I thought early on that they would make the list, but upon thinking more critically about them, they dropped a few places, as after the honeymoon phase with the game, I was able to look at them with a new set of glasses. First, the quick honorable mentions. These games on screen were all games that I enjoyed a lot whilst playing them. However, upon thinking a bit more critically, these games all had aspects that I did not enjoy so much, from pacing issues or lack of stuff to do. The exceptions here are A Short Hike and Before Your Eyes, both of which I loved a lot, but there weren't enough spaces on my list for them. But you can check out an earlier video I made where I talk about them in a bit greater length. The other games that barely missed out on this list were Splatoon 3, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, and Alan Wake. Splatoon 3 is an excellent installment in the Splatoon franchise and is my first Splatoon game actually. It's a lot of fun, with lots of customization and fun gameplay, with some questionable online functions. Shredder's Revenge is also a really fun multiplayer game. This is also, in fact, my first beat-em-up game I've played, playing as each of the Turtles, Splinter, April, and the secret Cassie Jones when you beat the main game are all great fun, and although the game is very short, the game makes up for it in its replay value. Lastly, Alan Wake. Easily one of the best narrative games that I've played this year. Its story has a lot of deep and meaningful themes, and on top of that, plays out well with its horror vibe. However, the gameplay can get a bit tedious or repetitive for some, using the flashlight, dodging, shooting, and repeating that again and again and again. Also, not a game but a massive honorable mention to the Cuphead DLC, The Delicious Last Course. It added so many new features, amazing boss fights, stellar music, and overall is one of the best DLCs out there. So there are the games that just missed out on the list, but now onto the first game on the list at number 15, coming in hot and with style, we have
Bullshit's blazing, still my heart is blazing. If the word kill me, I don't need a new word.
The first game to make this list is none other than the best fighting game from 2021, Guilty Gear Strive. I first tried out Guilty Gear in 2021 with Guilty Gear XX and I loved it. The unique combat, wide range of characters, the actual lore of the game, all made me appreciate the franchise, and I picked up the installment's latest edition at its first price drop, and let me tell you, this game goes hard. The game is fun for both beginners and pros. Combos are so much fun and very rewarding when you pull them off. The art direction of this game is just superb, making it look like a really well made 2D, 3D anime of sorts, and of course Totsugeki. However, the best part of Strive is the soundtrack. Kai's theme, Milia's theme, and of course the main theme are all some of the best songs I've heard in a video game. If you love music in video games, this game is for you. There is not a single bad track in this game, and that's a fact. And now, moving on to the next game on this list, we have something a little more spookier. Stories Untold was a game I felt compelled to play once Silent Hill Townfall got announced earlier this year, because it is going to be published by Annapurna Interactive and developed by No Code. So I thought, why not give one of their older games a try? And I was pleasantly surprised. Stories Untold is, like the title says, about stories that haven't been told. It's a game that I don't want to talk about a lot because it really is an experience that you must play for yourself. No other horror game has created this feeling of fear and sadness, really, because not only is this game a game that tries to spook you with its scares, it also wants to show you the horrors of the real world, and that's a mighty impressive feat that they managed to pull off. There's also one puzzle in the game that is, well, annoying, really annoying, but other than that, this is a game that I'll definitely stick with you after playing. Keeping with the game that depicts real life issues, we have none other than Max Payne is a certified classic. Not only is it the game that revolutionized third-person shooters with the slow motion mechanic, it was also the start of a banger video games that Remedy Entertainment would make. Max Payne is a dark game, taking us into the mind of Max Payne, his problems dealing with loss, and his pursuit for revenge taking out the crime-ridden New York. The gameplay is fun, especially with all the slow-mo combos that you can pull off, and the enemies can put up a challenge. However, one of my favorite aspects of Max Payne has to be the writing itself. Sam Lake, the writer of the game, is a legend in the industry. The writing in Max Payne does an exceptional job at evoking the emotions and feelings of Max, and moreover, the game is very clever in its writing and has one of the best fourth wall breaks in a video game. Although graphically the game doesn't hold up too well, it's just such a blast to play through, and I'd recommend anyone to give this cult classic a shot. And from one man with a gun as a weapon, we've got a woman with a gun for an arm. After a long time since Samus Aran's previous outing, and I mean a long time, we finally got the return of Metroid last year. I personally played the game over last year's Christmas period and into January, and being my first Metroidvania, I now understand all the hype and love for this genre of game. Metroid Dread is a very well executed game. Although many will say that it isn't the best Metroid game, which I can't comment on because I've only played Dread and some of Super Metroid, you can't deny that this game rocks. Combat and movement is fluid, the progression system is great, and there are some really great boss fights in this game. Although the lack of a strong soundtrack does make it lose some points, it ultimately doesn't change how awesome Dread is. I'm happy that I started my Metroid journey with Dread, and I think that it's a great starting point for anyone wanting to get into the series or genre of game. Next up, something that might send you to an infinite loop. Portal is definitely one of the games of all time. Up until this year, I did not like playing puzzle games. They were instant turn off for me, but Portal's amazing. The puzzles in this game are crazy good. They make you feel smart, either right away when you see the solution instantly, or after a few minutes when you realize what you've been doing wrong and the aha moment kicks in. And all this, I haven't even mentioned the portal gun, which is probably the most creative weapon of all time, and is definitely up there with the Master Sword and Buster Sword as some of the most iconic weapons in all video games. Another aspect that helps make Portal as good as it is the subtle lore of the game. As the levels progress and you hear GLaDOS talk about everything you're doing, and as you find the secrets around the world behind walls, the game takes a turn from being a fun puzzle game to a puzzle game where that doesn't just pose a puzzle for the player to solve in the game, but a mental puzzle to form some sort of theory on what has been going on here. Overall, Portal is a phenomenal game, and you should try it out even if you don't like puzzle games. Now, let's look at this year's top 10. When I played Super Mario Odyssey and made my video on it, I made the bold statement that this was the best Mario has ever been. Now, looking back and thinking about all the other Mario games out there, I don't think that it is necessarily the best Mario game anymore, but still a strong contender to be in the top 3 Mario games. The worlds in this game are so creative and fun to do Mario things in. The story doesn't get in the way of the game, and that's all the game needs to do. Metro Kingdom, Sand Kingdom, the Forest Kingdom, just to name a few, are all so visually distinct, but are also creatively made that they don't just look good, but have great horizontal exploration and even vertical exploration. And Mario's gimmick for this game, Cappy, the cap that lets him capture and use the powers of his enemies, is such a cool concept. Running as a Goomba, shooting as a tank, the wide range of powers are outstanding, and their gimmicks are a blast. The music too is some of the best Mario music out there, with some flaws in regard to the absurd number of collectibles you need to collect to 100% the game, a lack of a proper challenge, and some boring main bosses. These flaws don't hold a candle to all the positives that the game presents, making this one of the best Mario games out there. I'll get this out of the way first. Shadow of the Colossus has the worst horse control in any video game I've ever played. Even driving in Cyberpunk is more fun than controlling Agro the horse. Now that I've cleared the air on my one flaw with Shadow of the Colossus, now for the positives. Shadow of the Colossus is a work of art. There is no game that does visual storytelling as good as this one, and the fact that this game is so hands-off with its approach makes it feel like you are discovering the world for itself. The game has little dialogue, so interpreting the power of the Colossi, the history of the world, and the mysteries of the plot are all put into your hands. I am talking from having played the 2018 remake of the game, but man does this game look breathtaking. The strands of grass that flow in the wind, the staggering sizes of its natural environment and its ancient ruins, and combine this with how serene the game sounds, it's mesmerizing to explore the world. Now for the Colossus part of the title, these are standout moments. Each of the Colossi are so different from another in terms of design and how you need to take them down. Sure, just like the horse controls, the controls here aren't the tightest, but are satisfactory enough to make sure that you don't lose focus on the task at hand, because the feeling and rush of emotions that overcome you once you take one of them down is something that I can't come close to describe with words, and it's just something you need to experience for yourself. And that's how I'd like to conclude my thoughts on Shadow of the Colossus, describing it as a game that I love dearly, but ultimately recommend that you experience it for yourself. Now, in stark contrast to the previous game, you might be wondering what and how is Vampire Survivors so high on your list? Well, it does something better than most games on this list, and it's in fact the second most fun game I've played this year. The game is simple, but in a good way. It's simple arcade game. People will call it a roguelike, and it kind of is, although I will put it into the arcade game category genre, and it's hard to explain what the game is. You go around different areas, collect level points and weapons, upgrade them, and survive, like the title says, Vampire Survivors. Like Shadow of the Colossus, it's a game that you got to play for yourself to understand and experience. The game was €2 and is now priced at €4 since going into its version 1.0, and let me tell you that you'll be getting your money's worth with this investment. Celeste is a beautiful game. It's one of the best 2D platformers out there, with beautiful pixel art, music, and difficult platforming. And even in pixel art, it manages to not just tell a strong narrative, its main theme of dealing with anxiety and an imposter syndrome of sorts is powerful. With Celeste Mountain being a metaphor for challenges and hardships that life itself poses, it's fitting with the platforming in this game. Some areas are so challenging and difficult, but not difficult for the sake of being difficult, but to further reflect on its core message, how you can overcome any hardship that life throws at you, even if it may take a lot longer than usual. I believe that I described why I love Celeste so much far better in my dedicated Celeste video from a few months back, so I recommend you check that one out if you haven't, but like any other game on this list, Celeste is a phenomenal game that I can't recommend enough. Now, for the next game on this list, having slightly edged out Celeste, is one thing that annoys me a lot are people who still write Tunic off for being a Zelda clone with a childish art style. Tunic is a lot more than that. First, yes, there are some Zelda inspirations, but Tunic doesn't play on Zelda games. Its core philosophy of being a clueless gamer is something from any old video game, and the homage Tunic manages to pay to it is done in style. The in-game language that makes you feel lost and out of place, with the few English blurbs here and there being the straws you grasp for to understand anything. It's beautiful, and when you find the solutions to these puzzles, you get this strong feeling of accomplishment that not many games can replicate. Combat is fun with some Souls-like elements, and the art direction, man, Tunic does some stuff with its art direction that are wild, and Tunic's OST is also top tier, being one of my favorites this year. In total, play Tunic, which is in my opinion one of the best indie games of all time, making you feel emotions that only you yourself can experience when you play this game. Before I go into the top 5, I must do a very quick honorable mention for a game that I enjoyed but couldn't put into the list for one reason or the other. Sonic Origins Collection. It's been a good year for Sonic, with Sonic Movie 2 being an amazing adaptation, and Sonic Prime being a fun watch as well. On the game front, we got a collection of the classic Sonic games, 1, CD, 2, and 3 and Knuckles. I'm putting the collection as an honorable mention because A, it's a collection of games, and B, there'd be way too much Sonic on this, but rest assured, those games are amazing, and the collection is a great way to play them, although it did have its flaws and bugs when it got released from what I've heard. Right now, playing it on PC, on my low-end laptop, it ran pretty good, and I'm very happy and pleased that this is a good way to play these classic games. So now, moving into the top 5, we have the most fun game of the year. I will stand here and defend Sonic Frontiers as being the best 3D Sonic game, but I will also gladly criticize the game for its clear flaws that it has. Its art direction is not consistent, the islands are cool but look bland, performance is far from ideal in many situations, level design is not the best on some islands, and Sonic does not control well in cyberspace. However, these flaws don't take away how fun the game was for me. Sure, the game might not be the best game I've ever played, but man did I have fun. I enjoyed almost every single moment in this game, although there were some low points here and there, but the highs that this game hits are super high. The mini boss fights, cyberspace levels with peak music, simply running around as Sonic at super high speeds in an open world zone, and the supersonic boss fights with even higher peak music. There is just so much that this game does right, and even if people will say that this is only Sonic Team having made a proof of concept for future games, I disagree and think that this game is much more than that. It's Sonic Team finally having taken a risk, wanting to make a game that is different from anything previous that Sonic Team has tried doing, and tried to make Sonic stand out. Although I did enjoy this game a lot, I am very optimistic and hopeful for the future of Sonic and cannot wait to see the next 3D game in this franchise. Earlier this year, in anticipation of one of the biggest game releases of the year, which you'll see in a few minutes, I wanted to try out the previous games in this genre of game. If you couldn't have already guessed what game this is, it's Dark Souls. Dark Souls is a very special game and is regarded as one of the most influential games of all time, and I can definitely see why. Dark Souls is simply wondrous. The interconnecting world, level design that opens up as you progress, the daunting enemies, the melancholic and grim tone of the world, the bosses that pose greater than world threats, and the thoughtful combat. These features all form the complete Dark Souls experience, and I don't know what else to say in such a short amount of time, which is why I've planned to make a complete Dark Souls experience video sometime next year. Dark Souls is a game that can't be described in few words, so you have to take my word for it that Dark Souls is a perfect place to getting started in the From Software's Souls games, and as you keep playing the game, the atmosphere and the world of Lordran will certainly become one of your favorite gaming experiences. Now, for my favorite indie game of 2022, we have I don't really like first-person shooter games. They make me get extreme headaches, which I guess stems from motion sickness maybe. However, Neon White was the only game that I kept playing through. Even if the headache was there, which I'm pretty sure isn't the healthiest thing to do, I had so much fun. The combat and movement in this game is beyond amazing. Building up your cars, shooting them and discarding them when the time is right to get new movement capabilities is satisfying and rewarding. The enemies are all very rary but are very easy to defeat at the same time, but that doesn't mean that they are pushovers, because Neon White is a speedrunning game encouraging you to get the fastest time possible, making little to no mistakes in a single run of a level. That means you need fast reaction time to take out the enemies, or remember level layouts on later runs to improve your time by 1/10 of a second. Although the gameplay is stellar, some people might not enjoy the story of the game for a variety of reasons. The story is simple on surface level, and some of the dialogue is just, well, questionable at best. Personally, I didn't mind the dialogue, but in the end, the dialogue doesn't matter because the game is a blast to play through. Gameplay trumps all, and this is honestly one of the best games out there that sets out to do what it wants to do and does so tenfold. Neon White is one of the best games of 2022 and is definitely an indie game that you don't want to miss out on. Now for a game that I never expected to love as much as I do, with one of the best open world settings of all time.
So get away, another way to feel what you do on yourself to know and let yourself go. You know you do lose your self-control. There's snow under the rainbow. Turn away.
Cyberpunk has always been good, at least the skeleton of the game was. Having seen Cyberpunk Edge Runners, which is an amazing anime, I decided to try out Cyberpunk and, man, I wasn't expecting this. Having seen the glitches and other bugs on videos from the game's release, I have so much respect for the team at CD Projekt Red for working so hard on this game so long after release. They have worked hard to make this game what it should have been, and I commend them for that. It's sad now that Cyberpunk 2077's legacy will now forever be remembered for being a buggy mess on its release, being a learning lesson for publishers to release games when they are actually ready to be released rather than half-baked, but it is an important lesson for many developers and publishers out there, and it's sad to me that it had to be Cyberpunk that had to take the bullet. Cyberpunk 2077 has phenomenal writing, with the main story being thought-provoking and moving, side content that hits you in the feels, combat and gunplay that is so much fun to experiment with and feels just satisfying like any other game on this list, to its music having one of the strongest and most consistently good soundtracks out there of any game ever, but above all, Cyberpunk 2077 has the greatest open world in my opinion ever created through Night City. A city filled with life around every corner, showing you the differences in lives that we as people live, a dystopian future that can fill you with promise and despair. It's mesmerizing to walk around Night City or drive by in the many vehicles that you can get and the people you meet along the way. Cyberpunk 2077 in its amazing experience and the passion and work that CD Projekt Red have been putting into this is something I can appreciate, and I can't wait for the next game that they've got in store. But before that, we do have their DLC Phantom Liberty, which I'm guaranteed will be amazing. And now, to finally cap off the best games I've played in 2022, please give a warm welcome to the industry-changing game. It's none other than Like Dark Souls, I think that Elden Ring is also a perfect place for you to get started with From Software's Souls games. Elden Ring is just beyond amazing. Elden Ring goes up there in the same league of games with Breath of the Wild, Metal Gear Solid, Super Mario Galaxy, and so many more as one of the greatest games of all time. Elden Ring's concept of discovery, lots of accessible ways to take out the bosses for new players and veterans alike. The open world that keeps pushing you forward, always having something new to discover behind each and every corner, and then the map doubles in size and keeps giving you access to new areas is truly breathtaking. The Elden Ring music is amazing too, and some of the best music I've ever heard. The lore and world, with the help from George R.R. Martin, leads to some terribly sad stories that are really engaging, that push you forward in this world. I've made one video prior on Elden Ring, and I have plans to make a long-form video on Elden Ring sometime down the line. I don't know when it will be, but let me just make myself clear. Elden Ring is most definitely one of the greatest games of all time, and if there's any game that you should try from this list if you haven't already, Elden Ring would be my pick. Truly a work of art. And with that, welcome to the end of the video. Thanks so much for watching, it really means a lot, like really, truly thank you. I'm happy to have made this video being the final video of 2022 and the 38th video I've made this year if I'm counting correctly. Thank you to the people that have been supportive throughout this year, for the new people who came by to the channel, it's been a blast. The biggest motivator for me, other than me just wanting to make content that I enjoy making, which is fun to do, is that maybe somewhere out there that I can entertain at least one person So really, thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to see more from me, my Twitter, Patreon, Discord server, and SoundCloud are all linked in the description, and as always, any support or critiques are appreciated. So let me know, what were some of the best games that you played this year? They can be games from this year or any other previous year, so leave your favorites down below. With that said, life is getting pretty busy this time of the year, at some last minute work obligations and some have had exams, but it's almost Christmas time and a new year too. So to cap off this video, have an amazing holiday, Merry Christmas to those that celebrate, have a great time with your families, and lastly, have a good rest of your day, night or week, and of course, a good rest of your year, and I'll see you in the next one. So with that, once again, thank you guys so much for 2022, thank you so much for watching, have a good one, and with that, Storm out.